All right, welcome to the regular GI Joe podcast. And today I have a really good friend of mine. This is my friend Robert Taylor. I know him as Gimp, and we've been friends since '07. We had tech school together. Our MOS schoolhouse was together. We were stationed together in South Dakota, and then we're stationed together in Japan. So I've actually known this man for a very long time. And so with that, man, just thank you for coming on, and just kind of, if you can, talk a little bit about your story of what you are.
'07? That's '04, baby.
Oh yeah, '04.
That
Shit.
was
Yeah,
'04,
'04.
because we were in tech school. So my name's Robert Taylor. Like, obviously, me and Mike go way back, and definitely got to see the growth struggles of being young GIs and everything. It's not surprising we both eventually figured out to leave. For the others, I didn't necessarily know the trajectories on their career. I just knew at a certain point that, I think it was around year 4, I had a 6-year contract because I signed up for that. At year 4, I just knew I was ready and had to kind of clean up my act to get out. And that was when I started finally getting back into shape, finally made sure I had no debt, and finished my CCAF, and then finished up that last deployment before I got out, and that would have been in 2010.
So with 2010, and I remember, with you, I know one time we had a conversation, because I remember we had a dorm inspection, right? So, we had a barracks inspection or a dorm inspection. And I remember, that was a time where that really upset you. Someone going into your room and actually marking down the dust. And I think we had a conversation, was hey man, I think it's time to get out, because it's just, if you can't deal with this, it has to get going. Was that one of the points where yep, check mark?
So that was one of them. I think you knew the exact moment was when I was number 1 non-selectee, to watch someone literally separate, literally number 1 non-selectee, and then watched, I think, Shanita separate 2 weeks after she took the test and just disappeared. And then so all that studying and everything, all that work I put in towards it, just literally disappeared. And overnight, with no recourse, just hey, you don't get that promotion. Literally, that stripe just disappeared. And I was just and it just became useless at that point. And then I think the other thing that really got me was just being separated from family and some old childhood friends. I remember at one point, I was towards the end when I was getting over it, they already had me. I knew I couldn't re-enlist because they dropped orders for me to go to Korea with a follow-on to Lakenheath. So I knew if I re-enlisted, I wasn't going to be back in the United States for a decade. It was. I think it was an extended long to Korea, or just a long, and then I think it was another extended long over into Lakenheath. So that was if I re-enlisted for 4 to 6 years, the entire time would be overseas too. And at that point, I don't think I was ready to commit to seeing my family once a year, for basically till I was almost 30 years old at that point.
Well, once you re-enlist too, that kind of means you're in it for the long haul too. And because you're 6 years, they're asking you for another 4 years. And we've always had that mindset, hey, at 10, man, you got to either, you got to shit or get off the pot, because, what are you going to do, 11 and get out? And I know people who've done that, though, but you're going to do 11 and get out. So
Esco.
When you decided...
Esco did that. I couldn't believe he got out.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people... sometimes... I did 9 and decided to do it, and people were like, "Why'd you get out?" Same thing. It's man, if I re-enlist, I'm in it for the long haul, because you can't really imagine getting out unless there's really a circumstance. And so you're getting out in 2010, and so getting out in the military in 2010 was a completely different setting, because we went through the financial crisis. So when you're getting out in 2016, what did you do as soon as you got out?
Oh, in 10, the first thing I did was got unemployment, because I'm going to take that, grew out facial hair, started figuring out, because I was already wrapping up college, so I was kind of prepping myself for college somehow, and when I finished up like another AA because I was trying to do something. I was trying to do public administration at UCF, and I went in and talked with the guidance counselor, and she's like, "Oh, well, that's what my degree is," and that kind of like shocked me. I was like, "Oh, so it's like a skillless degree," and I'm about to be a sucker and burn all my GI Bill trying to basically approach a degree that I'm going to be a guidance counselor when I'm done, like no sure skills. So that's what made me flex into radiology, and then I finished my bachelor's of health sciences with that, and it was kind of like, and that was over the course of a few years, and I fed the. So I always, like, did you do the GI Bill? Mm-hmm. All right. Did you qualified for Pell Grants then? And when you got out, did you ever? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so my thing was I always had to take a little bit of loan in between each semester to make sure, because you wouldn't get paid if you weren't in school, so there was always that gap, and I always would take out about like $800 to $1,000 and just save it in my savings account to make sure that, like, basically I would have money for rent and food and everything like that. And then at the end of it, like, so I graduated, and then I started working, but I was finishing my bachelor's degree, but I was making good money. So then I just started using the Pell Grant to pay back off my own loans. So I literally fed the government to itself, and I absolutely loved that.
So what year is that then?
So I graduated X-ray in 2014. So then the second half of 2014 and into 2015, because when I graduated, I was still on my I was still considered a student, and they didn't, like, at that point I didn't really have any good or verifiable income. And so I was still considered broke. And so then pretty much that, and then into 2015, I basically still got Pell Grants and finished my bachelor's degree in 2015 and graduated school, even with getting a few loans for help, completely debt-free. And
so with you going to school, was that an issue, like when you transitioned, or was that like you were good to go?
I was good to go, but remember, I'd been prepping myself while I was in the military to go to school. Like, I was taking the CLEPs, I was taking classes, like, only one class at a time, just because, like, we had stuff to do. We were still having fun, so there was no reason for me to, like, dial down into school that much. And I was still a bit too young for it. And that was why I pushed so hard, like finishing college algebra and everything, to get my CCAF on the way out, because it just kind of proved to myself I was ready for college. And that's why I joined in. Now, at first I was a little lazy, and I had a teacher kind of straighten me out, like, "Hey man, I know you did your GI Bill and everything like that, and I know this is all paid for, but he's like, you paid for this in time, so he's like, you really need to show up to class." And then after that, I pretty much never missed class, like, unless I was actually sick. So, I was still a little, I wouldn't say lazy, but I was definitely stretching out. Like, it was nice to be out from under the Air Force's thumb. Like, and while it did create who I am and made me a stronger person, intelligent, understanding credit, and really let me get ahead financially while seeing the world, I was also kind of done with, like, the heavy-handed, and like you said, with the dorms thing, the heavy-handed part of it, of just kind of constantly being under someone's eye, rule, or thumb. Like, "Oh, you want to go on vacation? No." Or, "Oh, did you drive this far out this weekend? All right, well, you got outside of the area that you should have taken leave, and you did get approved." Like, all that stuff would slowly just kind of eat away at me.
Yeah, with us, man, we've always been good friends, but we've always been really different. Because I remember, like, you complaining about that, and to me it was complaining. I was like, I don't understand it. Like, this is what it is, man. It's like, for me, when finding military and following law and order and finding structure and stuff like that, to this day has this almost exactly the same person kind of sense, where, I'm still getting a haircut Mondays and Fridays. I'm making sure I do certain things at certain times. Like, I've always, like, actually, like, went into that one really hard. And I think that's why, I think for you, at least in my opinion, when I saw you getting out, I think it was like, it made sense. It was like, it's kind of like, all right, you did your time and respect and all that stuff like that, but the military is not the life for you, And I think that's fair to notice, because I think there's a lot of people who don't know that military is not like that. Like, everyone thinks that everyone who's in the military loves it, enjoys it, and it like takes over their life. And I mean, you're proof enough that no. And so you've been out already 11 years, right? So looking back at 11 years, Do you have it, and you're glad you joined the military? Are you glad that you actually got out when you did?
Yeah. I was. No, I came back and I was. So I was this close to reenlisting. I was in Dubai. No, not Dubai. Abu Dhabi, Dubai. They're right down the road from each other. And I was on a deployment, and I literally hit the jackpot for reenlistment because it was when our 3E6, when they were offering like max reenlistment, and I was overseas, so, and a combat zone, so I'd got everything tax free, and then I'd had like, they were offering me, like, if I reenlisted 6 years, they were offering me $100K tax free. And obviously you get like a huge chunk up front, and then you get it distributed through your paycheck annually and everything like that. And the only reason I didn't do it because I was like, oh well, hell yeah, this is going to be awesome. And then this chief master sergeant, me and him were working side by side because I was basically running the CE with him in this deployed location. And like he just Chief David Daniel, I'll never forget him, and he was just like, he's like, hey man, how much money you got in your account? And at that point, because I was cleaning up my act to get out, I had like over 30, 40K just sitting in my account, because I knew I was getting out and I wanted access to it. I didn't want it tied up in any kind of investments because I knew I was going to be using it. I'm going to need a car. I'm going to need this. I'm going to need housing. Like you're going to use it. And he's like, all right, well, you've got that much money now and you're doing nothing with it. So he's like, what's an extra $100,000 going to do for you? And I was like, well, I don't know, I guess more stuff. And he's like, and he just straight up told me, he's like, man, I like you, but he's like, you probably want to get out of the Air Force. He's like, this isn't for you. And I understood that too. And like you said, like you even understood. But you see money sign, you see those dollar signs in your face, and you're like, that's a lot of money, that's life changing, this, that, and the other. But then then you're overseas for a decade. At that point, the bonds with your family start getting less familiar. The bonds with your old friends or even people you're in the military with, like like me and you, they get less familiar. You just kind of keep bouncing from place to place, and you no longer really have any kind of familiarity with anyone around you anymore. And that wasn't what I was going for, because I think that would have I would have just had to spend that money to fill that hole to keep myself from being sad. So then it would have been just like a self-fulfilling loop.
Yeah, I mean, I remember like getting the news that you had turned down that money, mm-hmm. and I think everybody in the office was kind of like, when we knew it was you, we're just like, yeah, it makes sense. You know what I mean? Like it's like, yeah, it's like, it sucks that you're losing all this money, but it's like we knew for a fact that you just didn't want to be in anymore, and it's like no one was forcing you to be in. You always had that choice, and it was always that factor where everyone was just kind of like, yeah, you're just not military, and it's fine, because no one was mad. Everyone was just like, I don't want to see you sucked in, because we knew what that meant. That means you're doing 20, yeah. And so you just signed up inadvertently for 14 years without really knowing
mm-hmm.
it, for $100K, and it's like,
yeah. And you're going to work forward, and it's not like I'd come out terrible, and I'd be like, I'd be retiring in a couple years, like I'd be almost done here. What was it, 04, so 3 years I'd be retiring. That'd be like 20. Yeah. And I wouldn't be the kind of guy to stick it out a little extra. I would have been gone at 20. But like, I don't know, man. Like, I think I had this discussion with you. It's like, if we hang out and I don't want to start off a new career or try to do all these other things or try to jump into life or try to figure out life basically in my 40s. I'd like to kind of discover it all in my 20s and have a fabulous 30s and in my 40s really starting to hit your top earning, as opposed to like, all right, I hit top earning, now I'm resetting, and now I'm trying to jump back into a new career.
Yeah, I mean, so I got out when I was 27, I think, and I was talking to Obi earlier today, and I was telling him, like, because the military has set so much up for me, I got out of the military. I'm in Vegas. 2 weeks later, I'm in like a bar fight. 2 weeks later, after that, I'm in Compton somewhere, mm-hmm. walking down the street with a gun in my I'm doing dumb shit. Like I'm not. It's not looking good for me. But I think for me, it's like I had a lot of like mistakes going forward, and a lot of that was because this was the first time on my own, and I'm fucking up royally because I don't have someone tell me to be at work and do those things. And so when you're going to school, besides that teacher, did you find yourself start having any other issues where it's like, either you're sinking back to the old you or a lot of that discipline's going away?
So I don't run as much as I used to. So that'll happen. But that's also like I'm adjusting to a child, and I definitely put on some dad weight. The other thing is I got into a little substance issue. Like nothing like hard drugs, but I smoked a lot of pot. I drank a fucking ton, just a ton, like all the time. So I was always either drunk or stoned or partying or doing this or doing that. Like, I was still getting my studies done and I was still doing this. And then it was weird. Like I went on some trip with my buddy to New Orleans, and it was cool because we went to this punk concert in this abandoned bakery in the Ninth Ward that was destroyed by Katrina, and I was like moshing on someone's couch. And then we went and stayed with his buddy Julian, this guy from Jamaica, and we smoked like the most weed I've ever seen in this like skull chalice. And it literally sent me on this weird journey. And then fortunately I had that moment there where I was just like, I think I just prefer, I think the more sober me is the best me. And then basically that moment there, I kind of really dialed everything back. Like, I still partake and enjoy myself with, the vices of life, but like it's maybe not even once a week anymore, maybe, once or twice a month. And I like that version of me. But I also understand that, like, sometimes you never want to erase your history or erase the things you enjoy. You just understand that they need to be less. But substances were a real problem. And I think they were a problem. Pretty much anyone getting out of the Air Force, because they taught you to drink. The military is like drink. It's involved in literally everything you do is drinking.
Yeah, because I remember I was telling my wife earlier today, because we're talking about you, and I was like, yeah, first night in Japan, we went out and we're talking about, we got hammered, and we went to Naha, we drank, it's like craziness, but it's like a lot of our good memories too. Mm-hmm. It is us having a great time drinking, and so you're getting out of the military, you're finding yourself like there's no limit, you can do whatever you want now, and now you're drinking, now you're doing those things. How long was that gap before you started realizing, all right, that's too much?
It probably took, I'd say about 2 years. 2 years. And I feel, fortunately for me, there might be people that figured that out quicker than me, but I feel like 2 years is pretty quick to kind of be like, all right, well, you know what, just maybe you just need to be sober. And it's not completely, it's not like any more, any kind of like religious thing or anything like that. It was just like, I think I just got tired of the way it felt. The way anything felt, like other than like my own mind. And I think the other thing I struggled with was like bouncing in and out with like couldn't hold down relationships or anything like that. And you remember that, you saw me bouncing in and out of them when I was in the military and everything like that. I think that's probably taken the longest, and that was the issue, just because that actually came from the military, because I always made a pact to myself, if I'm going overseas or if I'm deploying, I'm breaking up with anyone that I'm dating, because I just basically don't want to get jodied. And that was, kind of made me a little self-sabotaging, because pretty much up until my current relationship, pretty much anyone I dated was, maybe a couple months, like, and the longest being like a year and some change. And then around a year, it's like, just, kick to the curb. And that seemed like a pretty negative personality trait there for a while that I've got under control, but like, the Air Force definitely kind of put that one in me.
Oh yeah, I mean, when you're thinking about being in the military and it's like you're a young single guy, like, man, like you become a different beast, especially when you start running around with other young single guys. And that's a lot of traps that the married guys fall into. It's like you cannot mess with these young single guys because it's a different world. And it's like we both, we would have fun or whatever, but it's like, man, you start having a lot more fun, especially when you go to Japan. You start meeting different girls, and then every other friend's having the same time. That's where a lot of times I try to like think like, yeah, man, it's one of the things I think most people don't think about when they think about the military. Like, think about these movies, and it's like, no, we're kind of, a lot of us, not every one of us, are womanizers, but it's kind of bragged upon, right? It's like one of those ones where how much can we drink, how much kind of fucked up can we be, and actually still have a good time and do those things. And, it does take, I think, a lot to kind of unwire that, because, one of the things I think the military does really well, or not really well, is teaches us very well, though, is like, hey, drink to have a good time. And don't worry about, like, and I don't know, this is like college, I don't know if you experience this, but you're here to get fucked up. You're not here to really sip and enjoy each other's company. Like, you're here to get hammered. and the story will come. Was that something that you found partying with, like doing the college part?
When I got to college, like I realized I was ripping and roaring, like so like I thought the college life was going to be wilder and stuff, but I didn't do frat life, and you know, like I was just surrounded by a bunch of guys that I actually went to the military. Like eventually Marshall came that way. Me and Doach lived together when I got out of college. Like he was probably one of the most, like, having him as a roommate at first really like put me on a guided path. He was the one who was like, you need to go to the VA, you need to get this documented, you need to get this started, you need to get this started. And, you know, going to college and everything. And eventually, you know, me and him parted ways, and, you know, me and Marshall lived together for a while. That was awesome. Like, God, he's such a I mean, he wasn't made for the military. He got into the military to go to Japan, and so he got lucky with what he was doing. By the way, he still lives in Japan, and he's married, has a kid, and he's like, and he's like a television producer, like and cameraman. Like he actually like films Japanese TV and stuff like that. Man, he's a different kind of dude. He's cool as hell. He lived in LA for a while, and he was like filming like movies and films and stuff for a bit too. So like, I was happy for that kid. But like, I really took someone, and so when Doach did that for me, I started doing that for other people in college. But like, my partying was a little older. Like, I didn't need to go to house parties because I wasn't under 21. And so I still had money, so like I would go to bars, and you know, I'd go do this, or I'd go, you know, find hobbies, and you find people. And I was in Florida, so I'd be hitting the beach up and everything like that. Like, I didn't do the college partying because I already did the college partying. I was doing more of like a guy in his mid-20s who's been there, done that, but still has a lot left in the tank, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, you know, when it comes to my story with alcohol, man, I have the same story with you, kind of. Like, I learned, man, I cannot be doing it. You know, it was going to the part where we're drinking. You know, I think I was working at either GNC or I was a personal trainer. And I think it was personal trainer. I was making like $500 every 2 weeks, right? And I'm supposed to support a family, and I'm in Vegas. Like, you know, I'm not going to school because I'm freaking out about school. And then I'm drinking nonstop. You know, it's one of the ones where the bar tab is, you know, probably $100 a night or some dumb shit like that or whatever. No clue. You know, and I'm making irrational decisions. And I kind of had the same conclusion that you did. Like, I like to sober me. You know, I think now I might have if I have more than 2 beers, we're talking, that's rare. And I don't even drink like liquor no more. I won't even touch it no more. It's just like, no, I'm good. 2 beers, because 2 beers I get tired of it. Liquor, I'm always worried that demon will come right back, man, because next thing you know, we're slamming shots, we're drinking drinks, and you know, I'm real quick to sit there and say, okay, man, let's do something crazy now. Is that something for you too, that you found out like you have to like put limits on yourself?
I still don't drink gin, man. I still don't.
Never.
You saw me at my ugliest, and it was always gin. I mean, hell, there was a few times like I'm surprised you just didn't beat my ass, and like I definitely was foolish and dumb, and like you know, I mean, I did eventually get my ass whipped. You remember that? But it was definitely like I'd never drink gin. I really like, you know, anytime I kind of drink liquor, I notice like I get a little mean. I try to do just a little bourbon, like where it's just like 1 glass at home, and it kind of gets the job done. I notice like I have a hard time, unless I'm out having fun, it's a hard time drinking beer and stuff. And I don't know, man, like I still like to get turned up when I go out and have a good time, which is infrequent, you know, just because it doesn't happen. And for some reason, that kind of scratches the itch. So, like, I don't think I'll ever give up my vices, and I think I'll always still kind of get, you know, kind of slammered once in a while. But like, it's definitely one of those things. Like, last night we went out and had fun and everything like that, and I got pretty drunk, but you know, not blackout or anything like that. I'm good for a bit, you know, and I know it, but I also understand, like, if I did that again and again and again, like, I don't want to be a slave to substances, like, and that is legit worry. Like, and it sounds like you got the same fear of like, I don't want to live that life. I don't want to live the life where like I constantly feel like shit, where I constantly get worried about, you know, making sure that alcohol is introduced to anything. Oh, we're going bowling, better make sure we're doing alcohol. We're going to the beach, better make sure you got alcohol. Oh, we're going to someone's swimming pool, better make sure I got alcohol. Like, I hate doing that. Oh, we're just hanging out at a park and like going on a walk. Are we bringing alcohol? Are we bringing a flask? And that was also the wake up call. Is like, if you could, when I couldn't go do like some basic function, like, hey, we're going to go hike this trail in Florida. That's really cool. All right, well, let me bring a flask. And I did that one time, and then I was like, it's just a problem, because like I literally introduce alcohol into everything I do, and that was the other wake up call.
Yeah, like I have issues with like I think an addiction personality, you know, because there was a time where I was still in, and like my mom got sick, and then my best friend had died, and so I'm drinking nonstop. I'm getting like a couple hours of sleep at night, and to sleep, I'm taking melatonin, and I forgot how much I got up to, but I got to a point where, you know, taking a regular 5 milligram wasn't doing the trick no more. So I'm taking 2, 3 of them, and now I'm noticing, you know, and I've noticed it over my life, the same aspect. I have addictiveness where I keep doing it. You know, I went to the VA and I was like, hey, I'm having trouble sleeping. So they gave me Ambien. So, yeah, well, no, so they gave me Ambien. And so my dumb ass is like, hey, I can sleep now. So what I would do is, I was a personal trainer. I would go at night and train like myself, right? But I would start off the night with like, you know, an espresso with some protein in it. And that was my pre-workout. So I'm doing that. And then like 2 hours later, I'm trying to go to bed. So I would just slam, you know, 2 Ambiens and just like, all right, cool, calling it a day. And, you know, I remember I was telling the doc, like, hey, I need some more Ambien, because I just went through a whole month supply in like a week and a half or 2 weeks. And kind of like, hey, you know, we can't be doing this. You know, you cannot be doing this type of shit. I think that's when I started learning myself, like, man, I got issues with these type of things, to the point so much where, you know, I had a friend that's he deployed, and we deployed together to Iraq, and he's been having trouble drinking. And this, like, I think last year, 2 years ago. And so I was like, hey man, you know, would you like me to kind of like not drink with you? We'll be sobriety together. And he was like, yeah. And so I do it. And he doesn't answer my phone calls, I think, for like almost a year. Like it's like, you know, even now I have a hard time getting a hold of him. And I think it's because he couldn't do it. But for me, it was a personal challenge to sit there and say, can I just not drink? And I just finally decided to have a drink. But it was kind of like after over a year, and I kind of felt like, now I'm in control. You know what I mean? Now that I can say like, hey, I can drink. But it's weird. I don't know if you had this problem, but do you ever just want alcohol?
No, not anymore. I mean, there's time, yeah, like, you know, in my 20s, 100%. And I had to go through the same thing with you that you did with, like I did with pot. Like, I was like smoking all the time. It was kind of a stoner. Like, you know, I was getting stoned for everything. And then I stopped. Like, I hit that Jamaican experience there in New Orleans, and I stopped smoking. It also that was the first time I ever got insanely paranoid from getting stoned, and that really had a change on me, because like I was miserable and I was unhappy, and it kind of like let me understand it. So like I started working about those parts of me. But there was a while there where I didn't smoke for like 6 months, then I smoked it once, and then I got paranoid again. Like, it was unfun, and I was like, I'm just not in a space for this. So like I stopped for like a few years, and then it was kind of one of those things where I learned, and you know, like obviously I've stopped for work and stuff, but like I finally came back and I had a control on it, and I wasn't in such a bad space mentally that I would go immediately to the bad spots of my mind and like get paranoid and upset and everything like that. So like it took a while, and like it was one of those things that also was like, you know, why are you messing with something that makes you miserable? And that was a hard question. It's like, this makes you unhappy, why do you keep messing with it? Like, why do you have to do this? And you know, that was hard for me to accept. I was like, you know, do you just relish being miserable? And I eventually had to say no, and you know, kind of make myself happy again.
So what do you think you were running away from? Like, what do you think was causing so much, like, I mean, what was that feeling that you had?
I think for me, when I got out, you know, turning down that money and everything like that, and you know, like just not making good decisions with relationships. They were kind of like failing on me. I was kind of like in a dead end relationship at the time. And it felt like I was just, for me, I think I was drinking and getting stoned because I felt like I was settling to be mediocre, and I didn't tell I couldn't really face the facts on that. And then eventually, I kind of, I grew a pair, and I was like, it's time to move on. And then, move on from that, moved on from some other habits and everything. But for me, it was me. I think I was just trying to like numb myself to accept the lowest common denominator. Like I was like, all right, well, if I'm going to do this life, the only way I can do this is if I'm drunk and stoned, so I better get at it. And like, if that's the way I had to live my life, it just means that, I wasn't doing myself any kind of service.
So is that like, is that something you went to therapy for, or is that something that you actually sat down and had to reflect on your like inner self?
I'll be honest, this is going to be terrible. I didn't go to therapy. What I did is I've only done it once. I took mushrooms, and I went on a long spiritual journey one night with a friend, and me and him like really, it really helped me plan out my future and everything. And I don't like recommend it for everyone, but it was definitely right for me right at the time. And that was my therapy. But now I went on, and I had some issues and stuff with my upbringing and everything. Like, and I know you grew up similar, with your single mom and everything like that. And grew up with some issues, and so I decided to actually go get some therapy with that, and at the VA and everything, and it helped me a lot. And I kind of like turned the corner on that, and kind of stopped letting certain parts of what are technically missing in me, to stop letting it actually affect me or make me feel like less than whole.
So going to get therapy, was that something that you initially embraced, or was it something that you kind of fought, like kicking and screaming?
No, I embraced it. Like, I'm not afraid to like talk about my problems or my issues, and I think you have probably like one thing they kind of mention, and I think you'll probably have it because you had that kind of same upbringing when as a kid. Is like you have incredible coping mechanisms. Like I can definitely cope through a lot. I can definitely like shrug things off. I can definitely like if I fall flat on my face, I have no problem getting up. It doesn't really like like I don't sit there and dwell on things. But the therapy was more like, how do I connect the dots to kind of fix it? Like, I just knew I knew there was a part of me that was fractured, and I needed to know the way to like retrace it back together. And now, so I was gung ho and ready to go for it. And I was probably only in therapy for like maybe like, like it was only like once a week for a few weeks. So it ended up being like 6 to 10 weeks or something like that. So probably 2.5 months. And I definitely put it together. I actually did their exercises. I actually did think on things. I did write down. I did all the things they asked for. And eventually they're like, well, I think you're okay. Like, come back if you have problems. But they're like, I think you put real effort into this.
Yeah, that's something that, the VA has me going to therapy like twice a week. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the weird ones, man. It's been a weird experience for me going to therapy. One, I don't think I need it. That's also what caught me by surprise, man. I was like, oh, I'm good, man. I'm great. And then I go talk to the VA, and they make me go talk to a nurse, like a mental health nurse. And apparently whatever bullshit I was feeding myself, they were like, no, you need to go see therapy. We're like legit worried about you. And so that really hit a blow to my ego, because I'm just like, I thought I was good. Like, I legit thought I was good to go, man, to the point where I was completely caught off guard. And I was just believing whatever I had, manifested to sit there saying, I'm doing. And now that I'm going to therapy, my therapist was like, hey, I can tell you're trying to do this. I'm like, I'm trying. Like, I don't want to be like this forever, even though I think it's going to happen. But I think I need to, talk about these things, or I need to really try to work on it, because I don't want to be stuck like this forever. Because there's some vets that you see, and you're just like, I don't want to end up on the streets. And I think that's where it could go. Do you think so as well?
It would never been a thing on the streets. I don't think I would have ever, like, I don't know, that's not really, I think I'll always be like successful as like, I'll always be able to provide for me and my family and everything like that. I am willing to put things away and grind things out. Like, I'm not afraid of doing that. My thing was just being like, making sure that like, I don't kind of run into like a midlife crisis or like a general unhappiness, and like, kind of let that seep into how, my soon to be marriage, my child, my all these other things. Like that was my thing, is to just not become like a bitter, angry, unfun person that, because like, I don't know, like I think if you've got it in you to like be successful and strive in the things you do, but like being close to the streets and that's never really, not my worry. My worry is just being a good person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's something that being a parent, which you are now, a new father, and I kind of want to touch on that too, because I think that's awesome. I mean, it's one of the ones where you've gone out of the military for now over 10 years. You're creeping up on 11 years now. Like it's a whole different person. Like the guy you were is. Do you feel like you kind of evolved like 2 or 3 times since then?
Oh yeah. So my first evolution was wrapping up my education and starting my career. That was when I was shedding more of the party parts of me. Like I was really proud. Like I got through a pretty rigorous X-ray program, and then I followed that up with finishing my bachelor's degree. And I really started my career. So I worked at Florida Hospital, Orlando, for 5 years. And from there, I grew, and I took over coordinating, and then I got into interventional radiology, and I really started understanding human anatomy. Like I was in emergency procedures, and so that definitely transformed me. And my second transformation was coming to Ohio, and then not being afraid to move jobs and everything, like constantly getting pay raises, because I realized that it doesn't matter if you stay at somewhere for 5 years. Like if you move every 2 years, you get more pay. And but I also went to the University of Cincinnati Medical Center, like a level 1 trauma, where everything in the city happens, and I learned how to do strokes, gunshot wounds, internal bleeding, all these other things. I'm a tech, not the doctor, but it takes 2 to tango. Doctors can't do everything themselves. Learning to suture, learning to basically help cannulate, cath, and all these other things that are really cool. And that was another metamorphosis. And then pretty much the day my daughter was born, I could definitely feel something chemically changed in my brain. And that this one is ongoing, but I definitely see that I changed the way I do things.
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier to you before we started recording, having kids, man, I don't know what it is, but I've had to reevaluate myself every time, I had a kid, so I've had 2. And that's what really got me out of when I started hitting my lowest point was when my daughter was born. Mm-hmm. And so, because it was I had to look at myself. I was doing so much crazy shit, and I wasn't looking at me. And when I looked at myself, it was just like, you're fucking up. Mm-hmm. You have this brand new kid who looks at you. You still have another kid that kind of looks up, needs you. You're not performing. And it really took a toll on me. It kind of pushed me over the edge to the actual hitting rock bottom. Mm-hmm. But it was I wasn't going to be there until I saw the actual, you're not performing what a father needs to be. This kid needs you. And you're not that. You're just not a dad, because you can't provide for them, because you're not unreliable. And as you talk about that new evolution and shift of you, what have you seen for you that's man, being a parent is something that you just didn't expect?
For me, it's really driving myself on how I provide and everything like that. Constantly, I've really improved my career. I went and got a very rare specialization, my vascular interventional, which I got last year, which pretty much opens the door for me to go and walk pretty much into any major hospital in the United States, and I have a job even if there's probably no jobs available. They'll find something for me, which is always comforting. And then it really kind of pushes me. For me, I had a very speculative side as far as investments, and I really pushed those to the limits. And then I've had my daughter, and I realized that I'm still pushing it to the limit. But once I hit what my goal is or what I've been seeking, I'm probably not going to be as crazy, as speculative as I am, because I speculate in cryptocurrency, and and I'm on the bleeding edge of decentralized finance, and there's a lot of money to be made and a lot of money to be lost, and but I know, but I've been working to this point for like 3, almost 4 years now, and I definitely started hitting my goals, and things are coming up aces. And I just had my daughter, and I'm fighting the thing of like, oh, we better cash out, this, that, and the other, because like that's irrational, and I understand that chemical change in my brain where it's like you need to do these things and like, you know, really start tightening up, and, you know, don't be so crazy, you know, massive swings. But like once I get through this next bull run, I'm definitely cooling off with that, and I'm definitely ready for a break.
Well, you know, like with my daughters, man, what really helped me become a better person, honestly, is I started thinking about the man I want them to marry. Mm-hmm. You know, I have 2 girls, and so I was like, what kind of man would I want them to marry? And I started thinking of this, you know, fictitious person. And what I started doing was like, you know, the reason why I came up with this was a lot of my friends that I have, that they come from a really shitty family, or maybe the dad wasn't the best. Mm-hmm. Their husband or their baby's daddy, because a lot of them didn't get married, are fucking pieces of shit, you know? And so what I've noticed is, and vice versa, if you had a really good fucking dad, you normally marry a really good man, because that's the example you have of what, you know, and vice versa for a mother as well. And so my logic was, let me be this guy that I want them to marry, so they find that guy and actually don't put up with the craziness. And so that's actually what was the foundation for me to kind of really start changing my personality, in a sense of like, I want to be a nice guy. Am I capable of violence? Of course. Mm-hmm. And I want to be able to protect my family and do anything necessary for my family. But also it came to a point where I had to really look at myself and sit there and say, do I measure up to that guy I wanted to be? And the answer was no. And so it's like, gotta work, you know, and a lot of it too is, you know, like education, you know, reading books, you know, being familiar with certain subjects, and, you know, I don't need to be a know-it-all, mm-hmm. but when we're talking about finances, being a little bit educated to take care of the family, of course. Mm-hmm. And so that is one thing that I have seen that like really changed me to my core, was looking at it, even to a point where I still think about it now, and it kind of gets me like emotional, because it's like my kids, right? But it's also like, I'm trying to become somebody that I want them to, like, you know, be that person. And is that something that you've thought about when it comes to your daughter, even though she's only 4 months old?
Yeah, so there's been 2 sayings that have stuck with me. Like, I got out and I've heard these 2, I basically read these 2 sayings, and they've probably been the core part of me about like a lot of my development. And the first one is sometimes and it really applies to me and you. It doesn't always apply to anyone. If you've had a father, you know, you're doing all right, or you know, you're learning what you need to do or what with them. But for like me and you, this saying is like, sometimes you have to become, or not sometimes, you have to become the man you wish your father would be. Like, and that was a hard swallow. It was like just understanding that, you know, I'm never going to have that dad, never going to have that father around, never going to have whatever that is. Like, I have to be it. And so when I decided I'm going to be the man that I wish my father would be, that strengthened me. And the other one that's probably like, you know, and this one takes more age than anything, is just because it takes a while for wisdom to knock on the door doesn't mean you don't open it when it does. And so like, just because like, and we always see hindsight 20/20, but like, you know, you still have to look back. You still have to, like, you know, wisdom doesn't come through just studying. That's knowledge. Wisdom is like generally through actions and reactions and the way things come on down the line. And it sucks to, like, you know, basically have that epiphany 2 years down the road, like, wow, I should have really done this instead of that. But it still doesn't mean that I don't acknowledge that I learned and understood exactly what happened and how I can mitigate or either prosper from something in the future. And that has done a lot for me. And it's also done a lot for me to, like, kind of forgive myself from, like, the nastiness or some of the just depraved things that, you know, we used to, like, enjoy, get into, and this, that, and the other. And not that you ever, like, not that I just go and excuse what I did in the past, but I also just, you know, you eventually have to find the wisdom to say, like, you know, that was just you in the past. Like, you know, you can change. You don't have to be this. And just understand that that's not the way you're going to go, and that you can teach your children to not follow in your footsteps when they're particularly muddy.
Yeah, I mean that's some heavy stuff because, as you mentioned, we both didn't have a dad, and I know for me, like it's like it can be, especially on the son side, because I don't know what it's like to be a female without a father, but without a dad, man, like there's a lot. Even to this day, people are like, you don't know how to do this. I'm like, fuck, like no one fucking showed me this shit, and it's like, But in a sense, I remember being in Iraq my first time, and we had tower duty, and so I remember just staring out to the abyss or whatever. And actually really trying to deal with this shit because there was a lot of anger. And so I've had always a lot of anger issues. And having kids now, I don't really get upset. I'm not even upset at my, like my dad. I'm just like, I actually now just feel sorrow. Like, man, I'm sorry. I feel sorry for you. You missed out on what amazing kid I was. I'm not trying to say like I'm amazing, but you know what I'm saying? Like those experiences. And even now it's like, now you're not even a grandfather. Like I actually turned that hate and it's like, you know what? You probably ran into a lot of issues yourself, and it was easier to run away. Is that something that you've come to terms with, or something that you're still dealing with? Kind of forgiving your father.
I definitely came to terms with it, and whether or not, I forgive my father, but remember, forgiveness is for you, not for them. And but I definitely twisted the dagger. Like I honestly had a moment of catharsis. Because I ended up finding my dad online, and I sent him a message, and clearly there was going to be nothing there, but I found out I had a half-brother, and I messaged them, and then he messaged me back eventually like, oh yeah, I this, that, and the other, I didn't know I had a half-brother, this, that, and the other, and at that moment, I just deleted the conversations. I did my thing. Like, it was one of those things, I don't know why, it was petty, it was shitty, but I just wanted to kind of slip the dagger right through the old ribs and twist it, pull out, and then leave. Like, I was good. Like, I never even needed, and I know, it could be shitty or petty, but, that was the moment. It was basically I slayed the figure in my mind. They were no longer a figment of my imagination. I knew who they were, and I made sure that, the person they were was on display, and that their family understood it. And then after that, I was like, good. I don't actually ever want to see you. I hope you enjoy your Christmas.
Yeah, in 2018, I think it was either 17 or 18. I forgot, or maybe even 16. I don't know. Around that time frame, I was looking at something, and so I was like, let me Google my dad. So I Googled him, and I found an obituary for him. And I was like, oh shit, this guy died, and he died in 2010. And so I was like, oh shit, I was deployed to Honduras during this time that he died, and no clue. And so I found his daughter, because it mentions that whoever he left behind. So I tried finding the 3 kids. I only found 1. And so I find the daughter. And so I messaged her, say, hey, this is who I am. And she's like, kind of same thing, like, what the fuck are you talking about? It's the first time I've ever heard of you. And so I was kind of asking her. And really what my thing was, I was like, hey, all I want to know, though, is there any kind of mental conditions, or not mental, but medical conditions that I need to be aware of? I have 2 girls, and that's kind of really why I want to kind of, ask you. And she was just like, I don't really know. I really don't know. I really didn't have a good relationship with him. I really have a better relationship with my father-in-law than him. And it was just like, at that time, I was like, damn, you, not only, it sucks because not only were you a shitty dad to me, you were just a shitty dad, a shitty person. And it's just like, man, and, it kind of felt, and I kind of know what you mean. Like, it kind of felt just, all right, we're done. You don't need to go through this chapter no more. I didn't keep push. I didn't want to have a conversation with her and be like, hey, so how's your, nothing. It was just kind of, okay, cool.
Boom.
And then I went back.
Closed.
Yeah. And so I went back through her Facebook feed, and kind of the moment he died, she sat there and said oh, just found out my dad died, and of course I'm the only one that could help. And I was like, it's kind of that, as a father, I was like, I can't imagine my kid saying that. I'm a burden, even at death. She's like, yep, gotta take care of his shit. I was just like, man, that is so sad. But it's kind of like, well, no wonder you were shitty to everyone else. You just kind of were a shitty person. And that chapter did close. And so with that stuff going forward, have you thought about the father that you want to be? Is that something that you're thinking about all the time?
Oh yeah, daily. Trying to read to my kids, try to get them interested in some of the things I'm interested in. One of the biggest things, I don't want to fall into the pitfall of not really understanding them. I don't want to be that person that's like, oh hey, here's this item, and they're like, Dad, I like that 2 years ago. You know, I'm not going to be that person that's disengaged. I'm going to be there for your sports. I'm going to be there for your likes. Like, I'm going to actually engage in the things you check out and everything. And I know it's not going to be perfect, and, you know, no one's got all the time, but like, I don't want to be the person being like, hey, how about, you know, you want to play some Minecraft? And then they're like, you know, I stopped playing that 2 years ago. Like, I just don't want to be that person. Like, engaged, know their doctors, know their teachers, know their things like that. Like, basically have more engagement than I had. You know, like basic and because you know what? Like, if we're being honest, let's say, you know, if me and you grew up, or at least I felt like if I grew up with a strong, like a good dad in my life, I think a lot of the vices and, like, you know, almost like the hedonism that I like slogged through, I don't know if I go through that. I think I have a little different kind of like self-confidence and self-respect about certain things, and, you know, probably don't, you know, date some of the women I date in the past, or this, that, and the other, or just, you know, some of the actions I take. And I want to be that force that, like, you know, I'm not going to helicopter dad or like force my way onto you, but I'm definitely going to make sure that, like, I cleared a path for you and you understand that it's probably going in the right way.
Yeah, man, those are, you know, being a father, it's a little difficult at times. You know, one thing, I read a book one time, and it was talking about, like, you know, it was a book from fathers to sons. But I read it anyways, like, what kind of advice can I get regardless? And one of the things that struck out the most to me was them always telling you, like, as a parent, you got to keep learning, because the moment you don't learn, your kids know you're full of shit, and they're going to stop listening to you. And so I've always kept that one. That's like that one book I read, and I was like, that, you know, that's that one hidden gem that I was like, okay. So that's always helped me always, you know, if I'm not in school, at least I'm always trying to educate myself on different things, because I don't want my kid to come and ask me something and me tell them I don't know, and it's okay not to know. I've told her that plenty of times, but just like a ignorance of just like, I honestly don't know anything about this stuff, and no desire to learn it, you know, because with us, you know, like being single moms, there was no time to really educate yourself, and so there was a hindrance when it came to learning how to, like, finances, when it came to anything really else, because, you know, it's, you grow up as a man, and what do you have to become a man? You honestly, you don't fucking know. You're kind of making up as you go along. And with that, for you, have you found that even though there's some things that were negatives, that there were some advantages to kind of learning how to become your own man?
Oh, yeah. So I've been, you know, fiercely independent for the longest time. You know, it sucks not having a dad, but I also didn't take whatever, you know, negative traits that my father had and, you know, have them projected onto me, you know, which you see on other people. So, you know, you got to take the good with the bad. Obviously, that's not great. You know, a good father is going to do way more for you, but, like, you know, an absent father that doesn't really push any of his bullshit onto you is also not bad either. I think the one thing, the biggest thing that I think growing up the way we did is I realized probably sooner than others, and you probably did too, that no one is going to give you anything. And that if you don't, like, go out and go get it, like, you can just be broke, you can be poor, and you can be forgotten. And you can basically just be another statistic. And so, like, it's made me, like, definitely aggressively approach the way I work, invest, the way I learn, and the way I act. Because it's just like, there's not a day that I don't read on cryptocurrency. There's not a day that I'm not looking to make a trade. There's not a day that I'm not, like, going and reading up on new things in interventional radiology. Or there's not a day where I'm not looking up or basically kind of checking in on my daughter, or just, you know, or, you know, talking to my fiance and, you know, figuring out her life and the way she does things and how her day is and what she wants and what we want and everything. Like, you know, there's not a lot of complacency in me.
Yeah, and I wonder if you had this issue, because I had this issue, and because we've kind of grown up in the military together, you know, coming from a single mother, when I joined the military, I had a really hard time being around other males, because I had no idea how we talked to each other. So, you know, even though we were all friends, I really struggled, because I was so coddled and so feminized in my ways that I have really had a really hard time dealing with the way we talk to each other. Did you feel that same issue? Or
the only reason I didn't have that issue is because of like the friends I had in middle school and high school and everything down in Florida. We were all really pretty like rough around the edges with each other. Never pulled punches, talked crap about each other. Really, always like kind of taking the piss out of each other. And that was the only reason I was okay. But like, I would be honest. Like I would be lying. Like the talking was fine, but a lot of times like standing in like a group of dudes and they just start reverting to like, I don't know, just real mundane like dude talking points. Like they start talking about cars and engines and stuff. Like I just kind of turn off and kind of exit the conversation because I'm like, I don't know anything about this. I don't care about this. But like a lot of like the default male talking points, I didn't necessarily have a ton of stuff. Like I was always on like the fringe things, like let's talk about Magic the Gathering. Let's talk about baseball. Like let's talk about video games, or like, hey man, I'm watching this anime and I like this, or like, hey, I like this like cartoon. And I never was just like, I love muscle cars. I love this. Like, oh man. Like the other thing would be just like, hey, here's like a half naked chick picture, and everyone's like, creaming, making all these things, and I'm just like, all right, it's chick. Never the dude to want to just put up like, a naked chick in my locker or anything like that. Like, I definitely didn't have like some of the super masculine traits that everyone else did.
And sometimes that's why I wonder if that's what I was doing, like to sleep with so many different women and stuff like that, was almost in a way to become one of the guys. Because you find out like there's a lot more guys than there are women in the military. Mm-hmm. It's crazy, especially with us, after those people had left, it was an all guys shop. So we're all guys now. And, I remember a couple of them, someone would hunt, someone would do that stuff. I'm like, I don't know how to do any of these. I don't know any of these guy stuff. And what I found out was like, well, I can get girls, and so we can go that route, and I can drink. And so that almost became my coping mechanism with, I guess, in a way to kind of become one of the guys. And I remember being deployed, I think it was my second tour to Iraq, and I was around other guys. Me and a guy would be talking, cool. And then when other guys would come around, he would just start talking shit to me. And I honestly didn't know how to handle this. Because I thought we were like, I was like, man, we're friends. And I didn't know this is just how guys communicated. That's how, I was kind of a loner, almost like for a long time. I've kind of always been, I guess, that way. Don't really remember. But, I've had those difficulties, and especially being in the military where it's a lot of macho kind of masculinity going on and stuff like that. Is that some of those things that you think that, like, when you talked about with the alcohol, that kind of helped carry over because it just kind of almost became your identity of who you are a little bit?
Well, the alcohol was just because it was there. It was like our release, and so like, but as far as like the sleeping with different women and everything, I did that because I like sex. Like hands down, it wasn't really for I wasn't trying to stack numbers or do anything like that. I was just trying to get me some, but like, yeah, like, it was always weird, like, when you watch people, or like, you get around people and like, it's just, they could always just only ever take the piss out of each other. Like you couldn't ever have a serious conversation with them. Like everything was always just like surface level. And that got old. Like me and you could talk, but like also me and you both were more like, we weren't just hyper masculine or trying to be that or anything like that. Me and you just kind of understood that. But like, yeah, when you run into a lot of these situations where everyone's just trying to be an alpha in the situation, it's just like, well, all right, go for it, man. I could just care less. And I know that was probably like a damning feature for me in the Air Force, like, because I was just like, I don't care. Yeah, I'll do this. Sure, whatever. Like, and that's definitely not the responses they would want or the responses that they needed. And I remember when I got way out of shape in the military, like it was bad.
Well, there was one time I was like really upset with you, and well, not really upset. Well, I remember this one time, and I started this own thing. We're in Japan, and like I remember your uniform was fucking utterly shitty, it was fine because that's just like that was that. I mean, it wasn't like it didn't have to be. That was you. Like what I'm saying, and I don't mean like utterly like I'm exaggerating to the point because I put mine was starched 2 days prior. It was doused in Stay Flow. Like, it was cardboard. And I remember one day, like, something happened. You went to go talk to somebody, and then I went to go talk to them, and I got chewed out because I had a button undone. And so I remember being upset with you because I was just like, here he is. And I think your hair was probably touching your ears more than, like, I don't know. Probably I was just like, you know, just, man. Yeah. But, like, you know, it was one of the ones where I got so angry about it. And I think a lot of it was, though, is I didn't understand, though, you know, when it comes into the military, there's certain times where people are just sitting there saying, like, we're going to push certain people a certain way. And, you know, that's their button. Or not their button, but we're going to want to do that. And so was there any times where for you kind of felt like people weren't pushing you enough, like you needed a push and you could have done great?
Mine, so I kind of like towards the end there, I kind of got the push and everything. I think I just got like just lazy and sloppy there for a while. And that was definitely because I wanted out. Like I wanted out at 4 years, but I had 2 years to go. And, you know, that kind of set in. And that was when I like really spiraled down. I think for me, I always, and I kind of got this from my grandpa, I always want to push the envelope of what I can get away with. What I can get away with my superiors, what I can get away with my hair, with my facial hair, with my uniform. I absolutely loved going with my shitbag hair and flip-flops and just like a raggedy-ass clothes, trot my ass over there to Foster and walk around the PX, and just loved when all the Marine gunnery sergeants and everything like that would just like look at me, and they just knew I was in the Air Force. I just loved it. Like the schadenfreude I would get from just watching them just know that they're seething, that I'm just like getting away with this and they can't do anything, they can't say anything to me. Oh man, I love shopping at Foster. And you know, that was me. That was me, always pushing the limits. I still do it at work. I still say comments, and I still like wear things, and I still kind of like push the limit. Like, what can I get away with? How can I make this situation not so corporate and not so formal? And I don't think that's ever going to be something that goes away from me. I mean, like, look how I would talk with Lavin. You watched. Yeah. Like, I would just literally shoot shit with Lavin. And sometimes I'd come up and say the dumbest things during the meetings just because I know he would just scoff, do a side, like, just push his love because I knew he would laugh a little bit and just keep at it. Just because, like, I knew it wasn't me forever, and so I'm just going to enjoy the time I got here.
Yeah, I think those are some of those, and those are different personalities that come in the military, because everyone, you know, people think you're going to be this one-way person. It's like, for me, I was definitely a fucking robot, and I loved that aspect of the military. And it was funny because you and I were friends, but you were completely not that guy. You know what I mean? One of my earliest memories of you is when we were in tech school, and I think you're wearing you're wearing like really short shorts, and I think you weren't wearing underwear so you could see your balls.
Yeah.
And I think you like did something to show them, or it's some crazy dumb shit you would always do. And it's like, but what I'm so happy about is like that's always been you. That's never been, you know. I'd be worried if you're sitting there saying like I don't still kind of do that to this day. Like, good, because that was the beauty of you is to that point where it's like I'm me. And you know, because a lot of times, you know, the military tries to make you them. And if you fall in line, man, you're gonna have a good time. And if you're not, we're gonna fuck with you a lot more. And so, you know, that's why I'm so happy that you still found a way to be you, genuinely you, but still like the responsible you. Now you're just like the toned down version, like the grown up version of you that you could always be. And I'm so happy, man. Like I'm really happy with you, you know, because I think one of the last times we talked was probably, you know, probably 2013, 14. I remember I talked when I was in Vegas. We talked for a little bit, and at those times, it sounds like around that time, like you kind of weren't doing the best. You're kind of getting a little bit better, maybe, but you were said that way. And you know, of course, I was fucking headed downhill like a motherfucker. And I think the problem with that one is you and I just didn't have an honest conversation with each other. I think both of us didn't want to admit that we were having, not in a sense failed, but what we thought was going to happen definitely did not happen getting out. Is that how you kind of felt too?
Well, that was like, and that was shortly before that. I got denied going into UCF, and I was trying to get into UCF. And it was like really embarrassing for me because like UCF's got like 60-something thousand students. I'm like, how did I get rejected? And I even had good grades. I had like multiple finished. I had finished my thing, and like, you know, and my other friends got into it without like somehow like didn't get rejected, and I was like, what the hell? Like, and I remember that was definitely humbling. But as far as like, I think the one thing is that it's hard for me and you to, you know, when you haven't seen each other for a while and when you're not successful, it's hard to be like, hey, I'm not successful and I'm failing. You know, like that's, ooh, man, like, and that's never the first thing you want to bring up in a conversation, because like honestly, like, you know, who really wants to air out that they're sucking? You know, like,
Yeah.
like that's a, I mean, and if you can do that, man, that's a different level of experience or human being, I guess. I wasn't there in 2013.
Well, hey, Gimper, man, I know I hear the baby crying in the background, man. I know you're on dad duty right now, so I'll go ahead and let you go. But real quick, before you go, man, I love to talk to you again, but I know baby duty. So can you kind of highlight some of the key things that you think that helped you get yourself on the good path you're on right now?
Yes. First thing is getting out, go to the VA, get things taken care of, try to get some money. Know what you want to do for college. Like I turned my GI Bill into a $150,000 scholarship. By the end of my school, like I saw the bill, that I ended up getting a $100,000 private college education, and it definitely made me sharp. 3, do not leave the military with debt. Have everything paid off, have everything kind of cleaned up, and like give yourself a chance to transition. Don't transition with debt. So basically that means like pay everything off. And the other thing would be like, is honestly like, you know, if you live a life without failure, you're never going to understand what it is to succeed. And like, you know, like, and I've definitely fallen on my face multiple times and got passed over for promotions, passed over for all these other things. But if I let it, like, if I languished on it, I'd have never grown. And I definitely failed out. You know, like I definitely had some bad. I never failed a class in college, but I definitely had some classes I had to get tutored in because I just wasn't cutting it. And, you know, I think being honest with yourself with your ability to learn or how you learn or the difficulty, like, and whatever you choose first in college, you don't have to stick with. Like, I was going to do public administration, swerved into radiography, perfect fit for me. I understand it, I'm good at it, and I succeed at it. But, like, if I would have just kept forcing it, and I think I also checked out criminal justice, and I realized I didn't want to be a cop because, like, I was like, you hated the military, why are you going to go into civilian world military? You know, and but like it's okay to like kick the tires on it. I mean, I was glad I took that criminal justice class. I was glad that I was pursuing the public administration. But like when I took my cues about whether it was a fit for me, I said no. And you don't want to be that person finishing your degree, because I saw people finishing their X-ray degrees that didn't want to do X-rays, and so they just literally pissed away $40,000. And I was like, you could have just quit in the beginning and moved on. And there's no embarrassment or shame. Actually, the embarrassment is you just paid $40,000 to still be a bartender. You could have just not went to school and not been $40,000 in debt. You know, like
right.
It's okay to just do what you want to do. It doesn't have to be in college, and it doesn't have to be skilled. It's just what you like to do. But don't go broke trying to figure yourself out.
So what are some things that you did that you didn't like that you actually maybe could have done a little bit better?
Bought the top of a cryptocurrency bull run. That sucked. Learned a lot from that. I would say like probably getting into pot heavier than I should have. I would definitely regret that. I should have always kept that kind of on the side. And then what would be another thing? Don't fool around with anyone you work with. That's a big one.
Oh yeah, that was
yeah. Shitting where you work, it just never works, man. Unless you just somehow have a plan that you're gonna go, like they're gonna go to a different building or a different this, that, and the other. It's just, man, it just really makes for a shitty time.
Then what are some lessons learned along the way?
I think that, and you hear it all the time, like fake it till you make it. Like understand that like most people around you probably like they may have a better grasp of it, but most likely their grasp isn't iron. and they don't quite and there'll be things that they understand, don't understand. I make suggestions to neurosurgeons like, hey, we should probably go with this wire, and they're like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. So you can always help out or always understand that there's room to grow and there's room to learn, and it's okay to kind of feel like a fraud at first, because honestly you are, until you actually get experience.
And then, so with all that coming in, to the end, what is going forward for you? What does the future look like for you? And is there anything that you kind of have a concern for in the future?
I have a concern for the American currency. I believe that it's going to get crushed by runaway inflation. I don't believe in the 401k system. I think they're just taking your money when it's worth the most. Currently, if you're retiring now, if you're in your 50s or 60s now, or even maybe late 40s, it's going to work for you. I don't think it's going to work for me. I don't think people are really going to understand what our money and everything is going to be worth in the future. And two, for me, after working in a hospital, working in a trauma center, and watching all these people basically get their life altered or killed or all these other things, I realized that I believe that living in the short to medium term is the best for me and my family, where we try to do goals, open businesses, do this, that, and the other. Because I'm not going to try to save up and hope that I'm wealthy when I'm 70. I want to be wealthy when I'm now. In my current, in my present. I don't want to hope that I can travel when I get older and get done with work, because there's nothing telling me that I'm going to be able to walk well, or I'm going to have a great healthy back, or I'm not going to have congestive heart failure or any of these other things. I don't think I'll have it, but you never know. What happens if I have a stroke? Oh, there goes that. There goes this. And die, and you leave tons of money to other people. I believe that taking care of my daughter right and sending her to college or whatever education she wants and making her a successful adult is really all it's about. And I like to die penniless, because it means I spent it up and I had a good time and I lived my life. Me and my wife would have lived our life the way we wanted, and not so much worrying about how other people are going to live their lives. I'm just going to give you the rubric. Go ahead and finish the class yourself.
Well, it's dope, man. Well, I'm definitely glad, like I said, that we were able to talk. It's been a while since we talked in general. Yeah. So with this one, I'm going to hit stop record, and then we'll go from there, man. All right, thanks. All right, cool. Yeah, man. So